What is the greatest crap show you have ever witnessed? My sister is an RN and recently got pulled to a wedding where her boyfriend was friends with somebody. Anyway, standard wedding going on, maybe a little more drinking early on than is usual, but pretty boring. She gets up from the table and tells her boyfriend that she's going to the bathroom and will be right back. So she heads to the can, goes in, and is faced with an odor. She finds a girl passed out in the toilet who has not only spewed everywhere, but also crapped herself. Keep in mind that this is like 8 p.m. So anyway, my sister, being the consummate professional she is, started dealing with it. She tries to get the door of the stall open, but it is locked and they can't get this girl out. She's concerned about her, so they tell someone to get the maintenance guy and also call 911. The maintenance worker arrives and he has no idea how to open the door, so my sister then tells him to go get a ladder and something long to flick the latch. He doesn't understand as he only speaks Chinese, so they have to go out to the wedding and find someone who speaks Chinese to translate. He comes back with a chair and a broom and opens the stall. The ambulance is not going to be coming anytime soon because it is a Saturday and tipsy people passing out at a wedding are a low priority. So anyway, they get the door open and they pull her out. She is covered in her own disgrace. So being a nurse, she is no stranger to poop and she gets some gloves from the cleaning guy and just starts tidying her up. So she gets tidied up and the girl kind of comes around. My sister says the ambulance will come and take care of her. She doesn't want the ambulance, but it's too bad, so sad, and it's coming. So she can refuse treatment when it arrives, but it's coming. At this point, the girl just starts throwing up, and all of a sudden, an unholy mess is all over the bathroom floor. This is the Family Guy level of cartoon soilage. My sister kind of jumps out of the way and hops up on the counter while she redecorates the room. On its own, this is pretty messed up, but not the worst thing ever. Enter Tippler number 2. So the girl on the floor, turning inside out, is not alone. Her nearly equally wasted sister shows up to the bathroom and sees the vile, messy floor with her sister in the middle of it. Instead of doing the rational thing like showing some concern, she instead begins to verbally berate her passed out sister, who is, by the way, still dirty. She's calling her names and telling her how dare she drinks so much. She then goes to rough her sister up and knocks herself out. There are now 2 members of the same family lying in the gross puddle on the floor. She now has to call 911 again to change the urgency of the call because they're still not there. So at this point, Pooper starts coming around, having finally emptied herself of everything, and she wants to just go home. She's completely unaware of her physical appearance, and there's no way she's going to be able to go out. Someone is going to say something. At this time, the bride's mother then comes into the bathroom and freaks out at the scene. She has a panic attack but is able to comfort herself long enough to not fall in the poop. My sister is managing 3 medical cases in a bathroom when the ambulance finally arrives. The paramedics come in and do their boring paramedic thing. The poop girl is now aware of herself and refuses treatment. Paramedics say okay and begin to leave. My sister then yells at the poop girl that she's going to get on the stretcher and go to the hospital. This convinces her and she agrees to go. Before they leave, she asks what hospital they are going to and the girl asks her to call her mom. So my sister then called the mother of 2 complete strangers and explained this whole messy situation and that she needed to meet them at the hospital and bring a change of clothes for both girls. Finally, able to kind of take a breather, my sister is about to leave the scene of the crime and tell her boyfriend they are leaving, when a half-tipsy lawyer enters and threatens to sue her for mishandling the situation. After helping 2 strangers covered in their own dirt, she's now being threatened with a lawsuit. Meanwhile, her boyfriend is like, "Where were you?" She goes back to the table and tells him they are leaving, having never been able to go herself. Now, this is one way to start this video with a lot of crap happening already in the beginning, and it looks like you win some and then lose a lot more in this case. And now I know we're talking about crap shows, but I thought it was more figuratively. Do we have any more literal examples of this? Let's go ahead and find out. This is story 2. I was at LAX on November 22nd when a car crash near my terminal was mistaken for gunfire, prompting a mass panic and the evacuation of the entire airport. At the time, I was sitting at my gate waiting for boarding. I saw a uniformed woman run by looking like she worked somewhere at one of the stores. She was being chased by someone else in the same uniform. I thought to myself, that's cute, 2 airport employees playing tag in the airport for whatever reason. 3 seconds later, I hear yelling and about 1 million people running behind them, and now it made sense. I picked up my bags and began walking to the nearest exit, trying to keep my head up. There was tons of screaming and a lot of people deering in the headlights. I must have passed about 50 people just lying in piles on the floor with their luggage, hiding. I was not really sure what their plan was, as we were about 20 yards from a very clearly marked exit. After pointing it out to as many of them as I could, I exited and we waited a bit before they let us back into the same terminal. Still, no one knew what had happened, and moments after being let back in, a squad of armored officers ran through, screaming for everyone to get on the floor. After another hour or so, we were all evacuated back to security screening, probably because they let thousands of people back into the terminal after the original panic without rescreening. Going through the security check again took like 4 hours with crowds of people as far as I could see in every direction. LAX was a layover for me. My delayed flight still took off without me, and I had to sleep on the floor of LAX Terminal 4 until the next flight out in the morning. It was quite an experience. Seeing so many people crap on the bed during the panic was a real eye-opener. Story 3. We had a neighbor over the back of our place. Everything he did turned into a show. Let me give you a prime example. He hires a guy to cut down a massive gum tree in his yard. It's a large yard, and even though the tree is about 30 meters, about 100 feet, I guess, tall, they got plenty of space to drop it. I guess around 270 degrees out of the 360. My dad saw them walking down the yard with a chainsaw and called me over to watch. Judging by the neighbor's previous attempts at various things, we knew it was going to be good. So they stand there looking at the tree, talking, gesticulating. Then the neighbor's friend starts up the chainsaw and begins cutting. I was a kid, so I didn't know much about it, but my dad says, "Idiot, he's cutting too far round. I better go give them a hand." No sooner has he stood up than we see the neighbor's friend literally throw his chainsaw away and start pushing against this tree trunk, which has started to move ever so slightly in the wrong direction. My neighbor joins him, and together they attempt to push against what is easily over a ton of tree that has begun to fall. My dad is shouting, "Get out of the way," which thankfully they do. The tree falls in exactly the worst possible place, all along the wooden fence with an adjoining property, smashing it to splinters. It also takes out a tree in their yard and only just misses their house. Idiot neighbor story number 2. Neighbor does not like leaves in his yard for some reason. He has a real thing about it, probably why he got rid of the tree mentioned earlier. I saw this while I was, rather ironically, raking leaves in our yard. Imagine the letter T. Idiot neighbor's yard is on top, ours is on the bottom right, and the other neighbor's is on the bottom left. Right in the corner of the left side neighbor's yard and growing over where all 3 yards join is a massive avocado tree. So I see our idiot neighbor picking up avocado leaves and flinging them over into our other neighbor's property. He's cursing. As he picks up more, he gets angrier and angrier, flinging them back over the fence. By this time, I've stopped raking and I'm just watching the show. He gets so angry that he jumps over the fence to where the avocado tree is and starts climbing it. He climbs up and starts trying to tear off smaller branches that are overhanging his yard. Suddenly, he lets out a shout of pain and surprise. We found out later that a massive huntsman spider had bitten him. I didn't even know how those things could bite people, but they aren't venomous. I see him windmill his arms wildly and then, almost in graceful slow motion, fall out of the tree straight down into his own yard, smashing into the roof of his dog's kennel. Thankfully, it is A, flat, B, poorly constructed, and C, large enough so he cannot hit the sides, so he falls straight through onto his dog's bedding. Lucky, and probably saved himself from some serious injury. Lesson here, don't be a stupid neighbor, but if you're the curious type and you're probably going to bounce from this video really quick, right, to go ahead and Google what a huntsman spider actually looked like, because I would do the same thing, make sure you go ahead and come back to this video because story 4 is just as good. Story 4. I kind of invoked the show by sharing an extremely innocent link on my mom's Facebook wall. It was a link to Bath & Body's Christmas air freshener sale, and this particular one was shaped like a snowman. My mom loves snowmen. Anyway, my uncle has about 10,000 screws loose in his brain and does crazy stuff constantly, but this one has to be the craziest show ever. My uncle kept commenting on the post about the snowman air freshener, about how air fresheners are bad for your health and why there's so many gay and trans people in the world. He claimed the air freshener produces pheromones that turn fish into hermaphrodites and that they have effects on the human brain. My mom kept telling him this stuff was crazy, but he kept going on and on about it. Meanwhile, my gay sister is witnessing this entire thing and she's getting more and more pissed by the minute. She's an amazing writer, so she wrote a long thought out post about what my uncle was saying. Of course, this pissed off my uncle, and he kept insulting my sister, saying that she's only gay because, quote, she's too fat for any man to love her, unquote, and including misinterpretations of Bible quotes. I deleted the post, but he ended up messaging my sister going on and on about how her lifestyle is wrong until she finally blocked him. We didn't talk to him for a really long time, and he ended up going to counseling for a brief time, so he wrote a long thought out apology to both my mom and sister. Unfortunately, he stopped going to counseling and he's back to his crazy self. Luckily, he's moved to California now. Story 5. I've told this story before, but it was a pretty good show. The first wedding I ever went to was just a raging disaster. I didn't even know the couple. The groom was a friend of the guy I was dating, so I got dragged along as the plus one. The wedding was on a golf course in summer, so it was hotter than hell out there. We wait, and we wait, and we wait some more, and I start thinking maybe the bride ran off. Then this white limo comes flying up the drive and literally screeches to a halt, burning off some tires. It turns out the limo company forgot to pick up the bride. It's 2 hours later than it should have been at this point when we finally get started, so the sun's going down. Naturally, people do what they do and start taking pictures. And that's when the maid of honor hits the floor and has a grand mal seizure because the flashes set her off. So they call an ambulance and carry on with the ceremony, which was really awkward because the paramedics are there with this poor girl and the bride is saying her I do's and keeps looking over and shouting, "Tracy, I love you, I hope you're okay." I have no idea if her name was Tracy or not. I gave up and went home after the ceremony because it was late and I had stuff to do. The guy I was dating stayed for the reception though. According to him, the bride's mother got completely sloshed and started screaming that her daughter's wedding had been ruined, so she turned over the table with all the gifts on it and stomped on as many of them as she could. It's a pity because I'm sure the couple were nice people who just had terrible luck on the worst of days, and when I think of crappy shows, that's the one that comes to my mind first. Alright, so this one wasn't too bad. I mean, if you're not the bride and groom and her family, because if anything, it was just a bad, unlucky day. But hey, are you up for more unbelievable stories? Please do me a favor and help me out by clicking on that like button and subscribing to my channel because for reals, it does help me out a lot. If anything, it motivates me more to find the best stories out there and to share them with you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story. This is story number 6. So it all happens one fateful day in elementary school. I was about 9 or 10 years old, I think. And we're out playing soccer next to the field because they would never let us young little kids use it. Anyway, at one point, someone hits a speaker that was nearby with the ball, and we think, no biggie, it doesn't look like it got damaged or anything, so we continue playing. Finally, about 5 minutes later, recess is over and they make everyone form lines in the playground so we can proceed to our classrooms. Weird school. And because we were about 1,000 students or so, the process always took a while. While we are waiting there for our turn, out of nowhere comes a swarm of bees and descends upon us like it's doomsday. What happened is that inside that old useless speaker lived a swarm of bees and they're pissed off. Everybody in the schoolyard is getting stung and panicking, so I bolt out of there and take refuge under a set of stairs, admiring the storm, or bee storm, unfolding before my very eyes. All I can tell you is that by the time it was all over, there was a huge line to the infirmary that went around the building. And as for myself, I wasn't stung. Story 7. In my senior year of high school, I played the Beast and Prince in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Being April in Northern California, it was considerably hot. Additionally, the mask I had was a teddy bear hood, complete with a pound of stage makeup. To keep me from sweating off the makeup, the crew had rigged a semicircle of box fans backstage to keep me cool when I wasn't on. We get to the transformation in the final scene, and an electrical fire starts backstage. This triggers the fire alarm and onstage sprinklers soaking the orchestra. Because we were poor, we just used a fog screen to hide the crew, removing my makeup and mask. When the alarm went off, the fog guy dropped the fog machine and ran, leaving it pointing right at my south pole. I happened to scream, "Crap, my willy!" just as the orchestra stopped playing. Also, I had to stumble downstage with half of my makeup off and awkwardly ad-lib with the other soaked actors for about 5 minutes, while the director and staff silently tried to decide if they should move forward with the show. Needless to say, the orchestra picked up and the fire department showed up a few minutes later, and ever since, nothing on stage or screen has ever intimidated me again. Story 8. One of my brothers had a crappy show of a wedding. First, it was announced they were pregnant right before the ceremony, stealing their own thunder. Then they headed outdoors at this strange country club place. I don't know how to describe what it was, but they did not seem to understand how to do a wedding. It was windy, they had the ceremony outside, chairs and other things blew away. They invited around 100 people, and they had around half the people not bother to show up after RSVPing. The desserts and dessert, besides the wedding cake, never showed up, which worked out, I guess, with the number of people who were missing. He asked me to give a speech, like just called me up to say a few words without any warning. After telling me my daughter wasn't allowed at the wedding because it was no children, which I might have understood had they not allowed the maid of honor and the bride's sister to each bring their children as exceptions. One a newborn, one a few months older than my daughter. It turned out I wasn't the only one asked to give a speech without being warned. My other brother gave an epic speech. He just said, "I'm a cop, and if your relationship was a car on the highway, I'd give you a speeding ticket and say, 'Slow down because you're going too fast.'" And then he sat back down. They were divorced before they made it to 1 year. Story 9. I was in Walmart once, and I know what you're thinking. This is how they all start. And you're right. So my girlfriend and I are buying stuff for our new apartment, and there are these kids in the sports aisle across that little aisle highway playing with the football. Kids being kids. One was, I don't know, 13ish, and the other was younger, maybe 8 or 9. Well, the little one tosses the football a little too high for his older brother, and it knocks over some boxes on the top shelf of the aisle behind them. Immediately, a large man screams from that aisle. The two kids freeze and look at each other for some sort of direction as to what to do. They decided to see what happened. I walk over there too, telling my girlfriend that I'm looking for something in the next aisle. This is where it gets good. Well, the box that fell was in the fishing and hunting aisle, and it fell right through the display case where all these sharp objects are, shattering the glass and going through this poor old man's hands. He's furious, and dementia-ridden too, I'm pretty sure. The kids are too late to run. As soon as they rounded the corner with their guilty-looking faces, he knew. So he chased them, slowly. He's an old man, he can't run very fast. Okay, he hobbled. The kids start to run right as the boys' mom comes over to check on her brats who run right by her. The old man with shorty hands tries to stop short but can't, so he puts his hands up to brace himself, hurting the mom. Well, she fell over and the kids were gone and the old man was confused and security came to fix the situation. I'm reeling. Long story short, it took 3 security guards to get a hold of the old man's shard hands because he insisted he didn't need help, swatting his shards at the guards when they tried to get close. EMTs came shortly after and told us bystanders to get out. Never change, Walmart. Never change. After reading this story, I kinda get now why my mom never ever let me play at Walmart, especially around the toy section. But also, at the same time, you would think Walmart would not put such precarious items for sale next to the children's section. Instead, they should probably have things like baby items around the kids' toy section because everything there would be soft and smelling nice. Story 10. St. Andrews Hall, downtown Detroit, 2000. After buying a pre-sale ticket to an electronics show and waiting outside in the freezing cold for 2 hours, we left, only to discover a back door and just walk right in. There were substances everywhere, which isn't that strange, but I mean, people were doing them on any flat surface they could find. One junkie looked like he was passed out on the floor and no one seemed to care. Other people were getting sick everywhere. All this is going on among 1,000 people dancing and raving. I see a couple fights break out, 3 people get carried out while completely passed out and obviously had too much. And then all of a sudden, all the lights come on and the entire place is flooded by DEA and ATF agents with automatic firearms drawn. They weren't shouting instructions, so I just bolted out of there into the freezing parking lot. Earlier in the night, I told my friends that if crap went down, we were to meet at a specific lamp post in the parking lot. They made fun of me for acting like their mom, but sure enough, everyone in the group ended up there and we left immediately to go to an after party. Story 11. A few years back, I walked into a club bathroom to witness a rather inebriated patron leaning at a near 45-degree angle against one of the urinals. I stepped up 2 urinals over, as courtesy dictates, and moments later, in my peripheral vision, it looks like this guy has either got a second wind, is pulling some new dance moves, or is performing an exorcism. I guess it was the latter, as seconds later, he's throwing up like Linda Blair. Unfortunately, in his state, his dance moves are pure instinct and he goes to cover his mouth midstream. He ends up leaking all over his jeans and shoes. He notices this, so he goes back to grab himself, but still in cover mouth mode. It ends with him sort of cupping his hands around his pants. So he's just catching it. I'm now looking at a guy clutching his stomach contents. Then the flow starts again. It's like the saddest fountain in the world. The worst part was the look on the attendees' faces. No amount of CK1 was going to sort this out. Alright, we hope you enjoyed diving into the chaos of some of the biggest crap shows ever witnessed. Now, on to the inexplicable side of public displays. Please do make sure to check out our next video. What is the most unexplainable thing you've ever witnessed? Story 3 is intense. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.